Hello, my name is Corey Waite, and I was born with a bilateral cleft lip and palate. What exactly does that mean? Well, that's a pretty good question. I definitely know that it is called that, a bilateral cleft lip and palate. I was kind of forced to learn that as soon as I started school. As a little kid, basically every conversation that I had with other kids began with the question, "Hey, what happened to your lip?" This was not exactly my favorite icebreaker conversation, so I usually answer with a short, "It's a bilateral cleft lip and palate." Of course, no one knew what that meant, so following up with, "I was born that way," was usually enough to satisfy them and move on to something else. Literally, anything else to talk about was better with someone I was just meeting. Despite the constant presence of this "what happened to your lip" question, though, I think I always kind of resisted the idea that I was actually different. Maybe the person asking this time was just extra perceptive or extra curious. Maybe other people wouldn't notice like they did. I still hadn't quite made up my mind until I was about 10 years old. By that time, I was convincing myself that maybe it was gone, maybe people wouldn't notice anymore. But around that time, my baby brother was just learning to talk. And one of the first things that I ever remember him saying was, "Hey mom, what happened to Corey's lip?" There's this baby, no life experiences, doesn't know anything about anything. If he notices my lip, as soon as he's old enough to talk, I can no longer ignore that everyone else does too. For the first time, it began to hit me. Not only did this dumb little baby recognize my lip, but everyone that I've ever met and everyone I was ever going to meet were going to notice it too. I was inescapably different. The weight of this to 10-year-old me was way too much. I remember breaking down, sobbing, unsure how I was going to move forward. But life does move forward, and eventually I realized it wasn't quite all that dramatic. I began to accept that this is my life, and it's far from the worst thing that's ever happened to anyone. It came up less day to day as I got into high school and beyond, and it was less and less on my mind. I'd love to say that it disappeared completely, but that's just not true. I mean, to this day, I've still never made myself a Bitmoji, because I just don't think I'll be able to represent my face 100% accurately, and I don't want people to think that I'm trying to hide it or anything. Maybe that's dumb, I don't know, but to me, it was easier to just avoid it. I do get by without a Bitmoji, somehow, but there were other, more impactful things too. I remember clearly, in high school, one organization was asking for volunteers to take leadership positions, and I never raised my hand. I knew that it would look great on a college application, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it. I was too worried what other people would think about me if I did. I could hear their voices so clearly in my head. Who does he think he is? He can't be a leader. He's different. He should let someone else do it. No one ever actually said anything like that to me, but that didn't really matter. To me, it wasn't so much what people thought about me that defined me, but what I thought that people thought. I was afraid to even give them a chance to think those things. So, I didn't. I think that that's kind of the same reason why I never learned any more about what a cleft lip and palate actually was, too. I didn't know what it meant in terms of bones or development. I didn't know what might have caused it, or, the scary one, if there might be any symptoms beyond the obvious ones. Even though it was lurking in decisions that I made, I decided that just putting it out of my mind as much as possible was the easiest path forward. Learning more about it, on purpose, ran directly counter to that. So, I didn't. In fact, there was only ever really one time where I did try to learn more about it, and in my mind, my fears were immediately justified. It was my senior year at Purdue, and I was having a few drinks with a close friend one night when it all came up. She started asking all those questions. What does it mean if the palate didn't develop? What was the medical process like growing up with it? What are some of the difficulties that it can cause people? She couldn't believe that I didn't know any of those answers, and the more I thought about it, the more crazy it was to me too. I mean, I can tell you the name, age, height, weight, and hometown of every single player on the Purdue basketball roster. Even the walk-ons. There we go. Even the walk-ons. But I didn't know the first thing about this part of my face that's literally right here, like all the time. It was kind of wild. So that night, when I got back to my apartment, I decided that I was going to do it. I was going to learn. Naturally, this led me to the Wikipedia page for cleft lip and cleft palate. There was a ton of information there. A description of it as one of the world's most common birth defects, diagrams of the bones and the development, and answers to all the questions that I never had before. But looking back on that night now, I didn't remember any of that. What I did remember is one sentence. The sentence that confirmed to me that knowing more about this could make it more real, could make it worse. It said, and it still says this today, having a cleft lip/palate will not inevitably lead to a psychosocial problem. Citation needed. It went on to mention increased risks to social skills, self-esteem, and behavior, but I couldn't do any more than skim that part. It was kind of terrifying, and honestly, I was still hung up on the citation needed. I mean, citation needed? As someone who does technical writing, I spend a lot of time thinking about when citations are or are not needed. And if you write a sentence including the phrase, will not inevitably lead to social problems, then finding literally one person without problems should be your reference, right? I mean, how can they not have that? This whole time, I was kind of hoping that maybe I was that. I mean, what the hell? Anyway, that was pretty much the end of my foray into learning any more about it. Who knows what other problems I might discover that I had if I kept reading? Nah, I was perfectly happy to stick with whatever issues were already in my life rather than go and look for new ones. That was the case until a little over a year ago. I was a grad student here at Virginia Tech, and we were working on a campaign sampling private wells in North Carolina. On this occasion, we were stationed at a county cooperative extension office, passing out sampling kits to residents. My advisor was off talking to someone else when a woman walked up. As I had been doing all day, I told her all about our sampling, asked if she had any questions, and handed her sampling bottles to take home. Assuming that was the end of it, I made to turn back around and sit down, but she hesitated as she was about to leave. I quickly turned back to face her, racking my mind for the questions I thought she was going to ask about how to fill up the bottles or what to do when she was done. But she didn't have another question. Instead, she just wanted me to know how happy she was to see me out there helping her with her well water sampling. You see, her niece had just had a child with a cleft lip and palate, and their whole family, knowing how superficial and tough the world can be, they were all worried about what that meant, about whether this child might have problems. But to that woman, seeing me as a successful scientist publicly taking the lead on this well water contamination study, she just could not wait to go home and tell her whole family all about it. Wow. I thanked her for the kind words, but Otherwise, I had no idea what to say. I was shook. I sat back down at our table and was immediately lost in thought. In the past, whenever I agonized over what people were thinking about me, my thoughts were always negative words like weird, different, unfit. Not noticing any difference was the best that I could have hoped for. But here, in North Carolina, where I thought I was helping other people by testing their well water, this woman had casually shown me exactly what she thought about me. And she viewed me as a scientist, as exactly the person that I aspire to be. And on this one occasion, she even implied words like inspiration or role model to describe me. For the first time, this whole world of positive words to describe myself was opened. It was there. At the time, I was so caught off guard by this encounter. But looking back, I wonder what I could have done if I had been better prepared. What would I have said if they asked me, what does it mean for this child to be born with a cleft lip and palate? I still can't pretend that I have all the answers, but at the same time, I've definitely made progress. I have a whole handful of leadership roles here on campus, and I now aspire to be a leader in the scientific field as well, working directly with the public. And really, the only time in recent memory that I've devoted a ton of energy to thinking about my lip is whenever I decided to prepare a monologue about it. But if I was talking to that child, I'd have to be clear. It won't always be easy. Some days, in your own mind, it will be a big deal. You'll feel insecure and self-conscious and worry about what people think. I know I do, but I'm still here, following my dream. So if you ever need a citation to prove that you can do it, that you won't inevitably have problems, then I got you. Hit me up. But you can do it yourself too. If you make up your mind to keep pushing and keep moving forward and to not let your lip stop you from following your dreams, then at the end of the day, it's not going to stop you either. Thank you.